governing policymakers, and participants. We are delighted that you have joined us for day 2 of our program entitled Transitional Policies for Poverty Alleviation, Thriving During International Crises. I am Dr. Kathleen Reed Martinez, Dean of the Geneva Institute for Leadership and Public Policy, and I join with team members in thanking you for being with us again today via Zoom for this conference. Yesterday, the Honorable Mahia called our attention to how human rights and rule of law need to operate in tandem with each other for a strong society. Numerous speakers painted and pointed to the ancillary changes we have all faced in the midst of the struggling pandemic crisis as our healthcare systems, our medical responses were all stretched to the limit with COVID. These challenges included what information was important, what was true, what economic crises resulted from these numerous shutdowns, confusion about best health practices related to the virus, and of deep concern has been the loss of trust in the media, and even more importantly, loss of trust in our government leaders. Dr. Collins, Director of National Institutes of Health, provided us with an overview of the current information about the COVID crisis, the vaccination policy development, and the challenges that healthcare providers and nations still face. While Dr. Fred Al-Beidi pointed to the local medical needs and healthcare solutions as he worked diligently to help his communities respond to the COVID virus, he did so as he had to allay the fears and uncertainty of people while simultaneously looking to the best policies in his nation. He, along with Dr. Timo, pointed us toward the need to adjustments in our healthcare policy. Through the case studies, we learned about the impact of COVID on our communities and economies, as well as short-term and long-term impact of COVID outcomes and shutdowns. Nobel Prize winner David Beasley apprised us of the resulting severe food shortages that are devastating communities and nations. We saw additional case studies that demonstrated the importance of building sustainable capacity within our societies, with clear demonstration of how small villages were able to weather this last year through their resilience, ability to solve problems using local resources, and a capacity to envision the future so that they could make good decisions for today as well as tomorrow. And today, our speakers will continue to tackle these important issues. They will expand on human rights and rule of law, case studies on how to continue the important work of caring for the disenfranchised, the poorest of the poor in our communities, and the role of values-based leadership that is essential to take us from just surviving to thriving. I trust that you will enjoy our program today. And now I will turn our program over to our Executive Director of GILPP, the Geneva Institute for Leadership and Public Policy, Medhat Escobar, who will serve as our moderator.
Thank you, Dr. Kathleen. I wish you a great session today. Thank you so much for the introduction. And Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Welcome back to the Day 2 of the GILPP 2021 conference. Thank you for joining us again. Just, I want to pay your attention to that just in the beginning that we have a Spanish translation. So please, if you need Spanish translation, go down to your Zoom and on the bottom of the screen, you will find the interpretation button, and you can choose which language you can use. As well, that we have the Q&A button. Please use it to put your question there. We will try to answer. If not all of them, we will forward them to the prospective speaker, and we will come back to you as soon as we can. Well, today, as we continue our program, you will hear about a number of case studies that demonstrate the importance of human rights and policy. we will have a closer look at the challenges and responses in different regions, such as Asia and the Middle East. The Honorable Alex Mahia has returned today graciously to expand on the significant role of civil society in public policy. We will round out the day with the important focus on values-based leadership, which is essential for those involved in governance in today's social and political climate. Without any delay, I want to introduce our distinguished speaker, and I have the pleasure to introduce Dr. Charlie Lamento. Dr. Charlie Lamento is an accomplished international human rights lawyer and former criminal prosecutor. He is GHNI International Legal and Public Policy Advisor and United Nations Chief Administrative Representative. Dr. Lamento will be speaking today on the topic of human rights and policy application. Welcome, Dr. Lamento. The floor is over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is a privilege to be here today. I'm excited about sharing some values and sharing issues about the law, because as a lawyer, of course, we believe that citizens' knowledge of the law is really one of the most important things that really are lacking today in many of the problem-solving strategies. So I will start with this, and that is, what really have we learned from this COVID-19 pandemic? What have we learned from this unprecedented international health crisis? Number one, what we've learned is that both at the international side and national governments did not have a really well-planned virus outbreak action plan, a written action plan, really to address the many unforeseeable, unprecedented problems that occurred as a result of this international crisis, including an action plan that would address the consequential problems and damages and injuries that would result from the government's response and regulations in order to eradicate and to protect its citizens during the international crisis itself. So I think it's true that this crisis has clearly exposed both the public and private sectors' weaknesses and vulnerabilities in their ability to solve really these many unforeseeable problems that occurred in this unprecedented crisis. As a result, many national governments quickly passed health emergency laws that gave almost unlimited authority to restrict and even criminalize human behaviors and activities and services and goods they claim were based on science, unless, of course, they're deemed essential, defined essential by the government administrations. Of course, we now know, in addition to that, that some of the science and some of their basis for passing these regulations have really been called into question even today. Worse yet is we also got to see that sometimes our parliaments and congresses and senates and our elected officials' ability to work together also is a bit weak. I know one specific European country. I live in Geneva, Switzerland right now, so I'm able to see a lot that's going on from in Europe itself, but one of the European Union member countries, think about it, all right, 4 health ministers resigned from their position. I mean, this is not the time for that to happen, but again, it goes toward the vulnerabilities and weaknesses of our governments, both internationally and nationally, to really solve these problems. I think worse yet is that these laws that they passed were simply, at least on their face, they looked reasonable, but in their application, they were arbitrary, and they were discriminatory, and they were unreasonable use of force was also applied. They restricted our movement, both indoor and outdoor lockdowns. Different countries did different things. Some had more restrictions than others, more severity in the restrictions than others. All again under the idea that they're trying to eradicate this virus and to reduce the number of those infected in order to protect the citizens. We have to give them that credit. I think it's also true that even the private business sector, even we've seen really from the first time, is they were also getting involved in the restrictions and regulations and demands and behaviors to limit our behaviors, sometimes even more strict than the government regulations. Again, that's quite interesting, right? Because assuming you live in a capitalistic society where competition is important, these people, the private business sector really risked its own reputation in angering citizens by doing some of the things that they did. And I think they're going to pay more so in the long run. I think it was mentioned yesterday by some of our speakers, but I think it's true that we are probably at the low of the low when it comes to the people and how they look at the politicians themselves, the elected officials themselves. I think the respect that they have for them is that it's at its low. We have to be careful, of course. These are people, these are human beings trying to do what we hope that is the best they can to try to protect us. So here's what we know so far. I think this is the theme of my presentation, and that is the truth is we cannot trust the public and private institutions to solve the many unforeseen challenges that arise during an international crisis. That's the truth. We cannot, okay? And that's not a bad thing. So let me also go on to say that from the human rights perspective, and that is abuses, discrimination, arbitrary application of some of these international really health emergency laws were quite serious. Again, different countries dealt with different issues. I noticed also that when you're looking at these laws, these health emergency regulations that our governments are passing, they never really tell you when do these special powers expire and to what extent can they restrict. So again, it almost seems to me from an international law perspective that there were a lot of ambiguous and vague terminology put into these these laws that make it quite difficult for the average citizen to understand what's really going on and when will this end. I think that is a big part of it. We care most about for working with the United Nations. We have consultative status, Global Network International, with the UN, and we care about the Sustainable Development Goals, and particularly as Alex spoke about yesterday, is that the number 16, this idea of promoting the rule of law. And as Alex said so clear, there's no real definition of what that means and to what extent does that mean. The rule of law, I want you to understand this idea that the rule of law means if the law doesn't say you can't do it, you can do it. I mean, that's really what we're talking about here. And frankly, specifically from the public institution perspective, unless the law gives them the authority to do it, they don't have the authority to do that. And frankly, thank goodness for many NGOs who challenge some of these really unreasonable restrictions in Europe were overturned, also in the US, overturned by the constitutional courts and by the courts themselves. I think it's also, because I work in different legal systems, whether it's the Islamic legal system or the civil law legal system, which is most of Europe, most of the world, unlike in the US or Canada, which is the common law legal system, United Kingdom also follows that. It's more important than ever because court decisions in civil law jurisdictions, for instance, it's not law. So therefore, the only way that you could change legislation or change the meaning of legislation, whether to expand the definition of the terms or to narrowly restrict the definitions of the terms, is for Parliament to take action to do that. So again, the citizen is left very weakened and very vulnerable. I think it's also true that there was not necessarily clear understanding of the laws. There was this quick passing of regulations and not looking for the negative implications of the laws. They weren't looking at the long-term implications, negative implications of these new health emergency laws. I think it's also important that, again, from an international lawyer perspective, this idea of what was defined as essential versus non-essential services, there are some countries where you could not even buy certain types of goods because they said we're not going to allow you to buy these goods because these goods can cause, transmission of the virus. So again, you had very unreasonable, not backed up on science, very arbitrary, very off the cuff regulations happening both in the private and public sectors that the average citizen probably did not understand. And I know if you've been on the social media platforms over the past year, you can hear, and I was listening to all of the arguments from all of the sides. The other side is, I think the other issue is that we've seen now unprecedented, think about this, you all, unprecedented censorship of information, both on online news content and in other places. So therefore, the average citizen, someone else was deciding on what we could read and what we could believe based on whatever they decided. So therefore, that was a big problem, because there were some things that we found that they prevented us from knowing information that you found out later that was true. So all of that being said, I think now that when we go into our preparation, I would hope now that the governments now are going to have be able to put together a more effective action plan for something of this magnitude that happens again, because chances are probably likely that it could happen again in the future. But I think for now is that we've got to put things in place. We talked about this idea of international human rights, fundamental human rights. Alex mentioned it yesterday, and we talked about that the source of it that we look at is from the UN Declaration of Human Rights, and that we look at these covenants also that are out there that really extend all the details. What's quite interesting about when we talk about fundamental human rights, we're talking about individual. These are individual human rights, not collective human rights, right? Collective human rights are rights that are attributed to a certain group of people, like the disabled group, right? Laws and human rights related to the disabled group are to senior citizen group, to the older people, for instance. Those are collective human rights that focus on a certain group. But the human rights we're talking about, and I think it needs to be made clear, because the average citizen doesn't understand the fact that the individual human rights that we're talking about, that is binding and by now binding on all countries in the world because of customary international law, UN Declaration of Human Rights, and these covenants that protect and that apply these human rights have been around for a long time. So they have become customary international law. Therefore, what I see happening is many of those individual fundamental rights, right to privacy, right to control the freedom of your family, and to congregate as a family, and to own property, and to make your own decisions about travel and how you spend your money. All of that, many of those fundamental individual rights were violated as a result of these international health crisis laws. So what I would say, looking also at different countries, I would say that the next time that they pass these health emergency laws, that they have to have some kind of a standard in there, some kind of a due process standard that allows the citizens and or NGOs, whoever wants to challenge some of the policies, that they can do that, because the law itself is clear. It talks about the limitation. It makes it clear about how far can the government go with its restrictions and regulations. So again, I think the case is very, very clear. The truth is we cannot trust public and private institutions to solve the many unforeseen problems that occur as a part of this international crisis. We at Global Network International strongly believe in this idea of empowering others, knowledge transfer, educating those to solve their own problems. And if this is not the best time to apply this, I don't know when. I mean, this is the perfect scenario now, the times that we live in, because there are many vulnerable, including the poor, including the hidden and the hurting people around the world. It's true, they're suffering the most. And so we've got to bring hope to these people. And we believe in this idea that to go and to commit, you can't just go. Yes, it's true that we are an aid, that we deliver aid, whether it's food or water, or try to help create housing or clothing. That's important when the people are desperate. But we also have to be thinking that as we proceed that we're able to show them how they can get out of poverty, how can they stop relying on the government and private institutions and pull themselves up, train themselves, work together at the local village, local neighborhood level to solve these problems, because it's possible. You saw some of the case studies that we had yesterday, and I think they were just amazing. I've been with GHNI and GILPP since 2010, so I've gotten to see many, many wonderful case studies that shows that this works. You're going to hear someone today also, Mama Hannah from Indonesia. Wait till you hear some of the amazing case studies that she has. She is also a firm believer in going to the local level to solve the problem by also using Indonesians to solve Indonesian problems. And therefore, foreign organizations and foreign aid is important, but we have to stand in the background and to support the people in some of these countries, and to support the people that are poor, to show them how to get out of poverty and to solve the problems that are so important. I think it's true. I would assume you all would agree with me that people that are poor, desperate, starving, it's the last thing on their mind is anything else but where do I get my next meal? Where am I going to live? How am I going to take care of my family? That's what we got to solve. That's the kind of laws we have to pass from here on forward that makes the environment, as Art Lindsay so well said, makes the environment perfect for the individual to empower themselves to solve their problems so they can have freedom, and so they can get them and their families out of poverty. The really exciting thing about this TCD training that we have also is it multiplies. So Dr. Martin Zatanda, you heard him yesterday, is in Africa. What happens is once you teach villages and neighborhoods, and those that are the most, again, even refugees, this is what's amazing, is you're teaching refugees, you're giving them solutions, helping them solve some of these life-changing problems in their life, is they then will go and teach others. That is amazing, and that's what I care most about. Last but not least is we also are a firm believer in citizen-based initiatives. I see that is growing, that is going to be more important than ever during these international crises, where you have the private citizens and you have the private business sector working together to solve the problems that are negatively affecting them. So I leave this with you, and I'm grateful to be here today, and I hope that you connect with us. GHNI and GILPP is here for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Charlie. I know that you have so much more to share about, but we thank you very much for your insight. Well, there is a last-minute change in the program, as His Excellency Governor Moon Soon-choi could not be with us today, as he's running for the presidency of the Republic of Korea. But Dr. Yang Lee will be presenting the subject on human rights on his behalf. Thank you so much, Dr. Lee, to be with us today, and the floor is yours.
Warm greetings from the government of Gangwon, the Republic of Korea. In fact, the governor, Moon Soon-choi, is supposed to speak in this conference, but most recently, he made it public for him to run for the president. So he earnestly asked me to speak for his sake. And we share the common interest and concern. That's why I believe that I'm in his position to speak for his sake. So first of all, I deliver his deep sense of apologies to all of you. The history of interactions between the government of Gangwon and Geneva Institute for Leadership and Public Policy, it's been long. Since 2019, the Geneva Institute group visited the province of Gangwon and had a meeting with the governor, who was happy to lead the group to demilitarized zone in the province. And the members of Geneva Institute got aware of what's happening in between South Korea and North, and what was the governor's desire for unification and reconciliation between two Koreas. He invited the members of Geneva Conference to Pyeongchang Peace Forum, which was established since 2018 Winter Olympics. For the government of Gangwon was the host of that Olympics. When both Koreas were on political stalemate, the Olympics 2018 became a facilitator of peace, because at the last moment, the North Korean team joined the South and became a one team with the South Korea. And that facilitated the subsequent interactions between two Koreas and also with the United States. So it led to the summit between South Korea and North, and also North Korea and the United States. So to commemorate such peace initiative that was created around Pyeongchang Winter Olympics, Pyeongchang Peace Forum was organized, which has become an international conference that hosted important events and conferences and sessions, for which Geneva Institute for Leadership and Public Policy participated from the second year. Hal Jones, who was leading GHNI and the Geneva Institute, was a co-chairman of Pyeongchang Peace Forum, along with important figures from United Nations and other countries. And for example, the World Food Program, Mr. David Beasley. So contribution of Geneva Institute for the peace and reconciliation of the Korean Peninsula, and also the prosperity of the region has been very significant. Facilitated in such context, Mr. Art Lindsley, who is a senior advisor and the executive member of Geneva Institute, invited governor and team to Washington, D.C. So he had a very important momentum gathered for the governor, for he could visit the White House and the State Department, along with Dr. Art Lindsley and the group, and also had good interactions with the political and civil leaders in the area. So as he stayed in the Cedars, which is to organize U.S. prayer breakfasts, I mean, it also influenced him a lot to think in different directions. So those are the history of interactions between the government of Gangwon and the Geneva Institute for Leadership and Public Policy. The governor is very happy that this is co-organized by Geneva Institute and UNITAR, United Nations Institute for Training and Research. And the government of Gangwon wants to engage more deeply with UNITAR initiatives, especially as they are preparing a curriculum of sports diplomacy. Because that is very relevant to the government of Gangwon, as the government is again co-host with North Korea, the North Korea government of Gangwon, the 2024 Winter Youth Olympics. So the Special Committee of Diplomacy has been recently formed, and I'm grateful that the governor assigned me to head the Diplomacy Committee for 2024 Winter Youth Olympics. So the government of Gangwon wants to develop further the cooperation with the Geneva Institute and UNITAR, especially for the Olympics for youth in winter 2024. There are basically important human rights issues that's related to both Koreas. Especially in view of North Korea, the governor think that there are 4 very important issues related. Number 1 is right to information. Number 2 is right to religious freedom. And number 3 is right to the pursuit of happiness. Number 4, the right to assemble and organize. Currently, the North Korea is not very strong in this, to his view. And also those rights should be rigorously pursued in South Korea. So these are the important human rights issues that the governor wants to handle in cooperation with Geneva Institute and UNITAR in coming days. Recently, he organized the Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Committee for the Olympics and for the other issues, because the Gangwon is the only province that's divided on a provincial level between South Korea and North. So that's why IOC, International Olympics Committee, have decided that the Winter Olympics in 2024 should be co-organized and co-hosted by both Gangwon. Now, North Gangwon is not yet responded to that call, while South Korea Gangwon province have responded. So it's decided that Winter Olympics would happen in the province of Gangwon, hopefully, in the North Korea too. So Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Committee has been established to promote such codes and directions. Now the governor has publicly declared that he would run for the president for 2022 presidential elections. So that's why that he could not come to this conference with deep apologies, but his heart is in this conference, and he is more than willing to move together with Geneva Institute and UNITAR. So thank you so much for giving such opportunity to share for the sake of the Governor Moon-Soon Choi. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lee, for this presentation on behalf of His Excellency Governor Moon-Soon Choi. And please, we will do everything in our capacity to pursue this relationship with the governor, and that our partnership will grow hopefully in the future. And it is such a privilege for us too. Thank you so much. Well, now I will move to introduce our next distinguished speaker is Dr. Young Jae Lee. He's going to speak on behalf of himself this time. He is the president of the GPM Network Asia, Vice Chancellor Emeritus at Kumi University in Uganda. He is an advisor to the governor of Gangwon in the Republic of Korea. He's also head of Olympics Diplomacy Committee for 2024 Winter Youth Olympics. Dr. Lee will be presenting on a human rights case study. Dr. Lee, welcome again, and the floor is yours.
Warm greetings from the government of Gangwon, the Republic of Korea. I am Young-gil Lee, who is an advisor in future strategy and public diplomacy in the government of Gangwon, the Republic of Korea. And thank you for allowing me to share my thoughts on human rights case in the Korean Peninsula. And, the demilitarized zone is existent in Korean Peninsula, which is called DMZ, which is a very clear sign of human rights violation, meaning that the basic human rights in Korean Peninsula, that includes both Koreas, cannot exercise their human rights, especially when they want to do with each other. So basic human rights that I say, and this is the 4 basic rights which was mentioned by the governor, Moon Choi, in his previous sessions. I spoke for his sake. That they are the right to information, the right to religious freedom, right to the pursuit of happiness, and the right to assemble and organize. So this human rights are not respected for the Korean people who are living in both Koreas, especially when the interactions between 2 Koreas are viewed. Such violation has become quite apparent. Now, people in North Korea, for example, has no access to a meaningful information freely. Only a limited informations are given to them. So even though they want to have access to the information in other part of the world, that includes South Korea, is very limited. And such a pressure was given that they cannot even try to get access to such informations. So their views have become quite narrowed, and because of no access to such information, the development prospect has been quite dim and narrow and limited. And there's no right to religious freedom. Relatively more freedom is given to the people in South Korea, but the people in North Korea, more limited in this regard. There are only a few publicly recognized places of worship in North Korea, so the people cannot express their faith publicly. And it is not possible at this moment for both Koreans to pursue happiness together, because there's no way for the Koreans to exchange their ideas and even plan together to launch a business. And whatsoever they are is to be done in only a half part of the peninsula. So the things cannot be done by both Koreans. It is an extreme tragedy and the violation of the human rights in the peninsula. And there is no right to assemble and organize themselves across the Korean division lines. So the DMZ, the demilitarized zone, is in fact the most militarized zone in the whole world. And it was very strong and has become kind of permanent line of divisions. And it says that human rights in the peninsula is kept being violated and not respected. So the governor and the people, who are with him now would like to say that this should be stopped. And now the Inter-Gangwon cooperation and communication should be restored as before. And that's why now the Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Committee is being formed. Now, Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Committee is to promote peace and reconciliation between two Gangwons, because the Gangwon is the only province that's been divided between South and North Korea on provincial level. So it has a very high significance when we are dealing with unification issues of two Koreas. So most recently, Dr. Art Lindsley, who is stationed in Washington, D.C., was instrumental to form a U.S. Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Committee. And along with it, such committees are being formed in India and UAE, and in upcoming days in Netherlands and many other countries. That will be a public diplomacy forum to promote and support the noble cause, in between South and North Koreas, especially in both Gangwon. That is the public diplomacy forum to deal with public issues that includes economic issues, commercial issues, tourism issues, sports, politics, and many other issues that will be dealt in this public diplomacy forum. This is in between South Gangwon and North in Korean Peninsula, but also with Korea. That includes both South and North with the nations. So that's why we are, encouraging such committee to be formed in all countries. That's registered in the United Nations. Even others have not yet registered. So that is for the fulfillment of the basic human rights. Now, Gangwon has become again a host of 2024 Winter Olympics. That is for the youth. So IOC, International Olympics Committee, have decided that 2024 Winter Youth Olympics would be hosted by Gangwon. That means not only by the South Gangwon, but also by North too. So it will be a joint hosting of Olympics in 2024. For that, North Korea has not yet responded, and the South Korea has responded positively. So it's now publicly decided that the Olympics will be taking place in Gangwon. Now, we want to make Olympic a media for peace and reconciliation of Korean Peninsula and the world. So we are earnestly urging that international communities, that includes Geneva Institute for Leadership and Public Policy and the UNITAR would be with us to make such a joint hosting happen in 2024. That's one of the reasons why we have established a Inter-Gangwon Cooperation Committee in Gangwon and out of Gangwon. And I hope that you who listen to this would be with us in forming and organizing and exercising noble cause for peace and reconciliation of Korean Peninsula, especially in Gangwon area, which has been divided in particular. So thank you so much for giving me such a wonderful opportunity to share in Geneva Institute, which is co-organized with UNITAR. Thank you. Bless you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lee. We wish you all success for the coming Olympics, and we will pursue for sure our relationship with you and the governor as well. Thank you so much. Well, there's a little change of in the program because just to be respectful to the time of Mr. Mahia, I would just maybe we'll move on to Mr. Alex Mahia to speak on the, after Dr. Lee. Well, unfortunately, Dr. Jerry Regier couldn't be with us today to speak on the subject, but Mr. Mahia accepted to speak to us today, and I know that we will benefit a lot from his experience on this subject. Well, Honorable Alex Mahia is Director of the Division for the People and Social Inclusion at the United Nations Institute for Training and Research, UNITAR. He is more than 20 years experience working at the highest level of public sectors and international affairs. He has served as a Vice Minister of Economy of the Republic of Ecuador as well. He will speak on the topic of civil societies' role and the importance of their response, and will give an overview on private-public partnership. Thank you so much, Excellency, for being with us today again. It's such a pleasure to be listening to you and accepting our invitation. Please, the floor is yours. Welcome.
Thanks to you, Director Eskandar. It's always my pleasure and my privilege to engage with the Geneva Institute for Leadership and Public Policy. I bring salutations to all of you listening from around the world, from UNITAR, the UN agency in charge of training and research globally. So I do have a presentation that I will hope to deliver to somehow present our view on what is the role of civil society, the United Nations view, of course, and this is something that in the end, I hope I can go deeper into to encourage everyone listening that has indeed a role in civil society or a civil society organization to join us. The idea here is that this presentation, hopefully, God willing, will be transformed into an invitation indeed. So, Julia, next, please. The previous Secretary General that I serve, I do report to United Nations Assistant Secretary General Nikhil Seth, known as one of the fathers of Agenda 2030 and SDGs. But before, when I was the head of UNITAR for Asia Pacific out of Hiroshima, Japan, for 3 years, I had the privilege of not only working under the mandate of Secretary General Ban Ki-moon from Korea, but also I had the privilege of hosting him for a couple of days in an official visit to Japan and to talk with him in detail. And I can tell you that what I'm going to read now is actually what he believed. He was absolutely convinced that the UN cannot do things alone and that indeed we need to create partnerships. So our former Secretary General Ban Ki-moon used to say that one of the main lessons that he had learned during his years as Secretary General, 10 in the end, is that broad partnerships are the key to solving broad challenges. When governments, the United Nations, businesses, philanthropies, and civil society work hand in hand, we can indeed achieve great things. So there is a civil space that we need to understand that can enable people and groups to participate meaningfully online and offline in the political, economic, social, and cultural life of their societies. Within this space that we must recognize, there is people that can express their views freely and without fear and assemble peacefully. We have to protect that space. And finally, this space should allow for engagement in decision-making processes in relation to issues that affect their lives. Next, please. I love the way my team put together this presentation, highlighting the word life and later on that civil society is a mirror and so on. Because I do believe that if we in the public sector, and as a former senior government official myself, I have been there, quite a privilege for me, where laws and public policy were actually conceived, drafted, approved and enacted. I do believe that civil society is what brings to life whatever the public sector can do. So you see there that institutions indeed can bring order, but it is the civil society who brings life. Institutions decide on policies, but it is the civil society who brings life to those policies. They become a reality through their application in society, and it is the organized society, the one that provides checks and balances and feedback and so on. We can have best norms and public policies in place, but they remain just dead documents on the paper unless civil society actors are part of them, have ownership, understand, accept, and implement them correctly in partnership with the public sector. Shortly, engagement of civil society is key for any public policy to be successful. Next, please. Presence. When we talk about the role of civil society, we have to understand that in contact with everyday life, civil society organizations know what is going on in the society, the real needs and moods. They are those who can see first if there are any grievances of injustice within the society. By the way, sorry for that typo. They are vital partners in strengthening peace and stability in their societies. In times of crisis, they are the first responders. I would like to repeat that part because I do know many, a former colleague or many people in government that believe that the public sector is actually the first responder. It is not the case. It is the community that is the first responder, and especially when the community is organized. Vibrant civil society makes the whole society more healthy, stronger, and resilient against threats. Whatever threat, be it a health pandemic, fake news, or a natural disaster. Next, please. Now, the role of civil society requires a change of mindset. Authorities in power need to understand constructive criticism is not a threat, but in fact, it is a good service vital for the society to thrive. Here, as I really would like to make this personal and to really take advantage of the opportunity to share, I will have a kind of a public confession after more than a decade. When I was in government, when I was a minister of state and so on, I regret to say that I had these priorities. Whatever the president would say, whatever was discussed in the cabinet or by other ministers, or when I was a deputy minister by vice minister, and then media, and then perhaps some stakeholders, and then civil society. It should be exactly the other way around. It should be that ministers, deputy ministers, undersecretaries, governors, mayors, and so on pay attention first and foremost at the mandate of the people, and the mandate of the people should be understood at what society is telling us, and particularly what civil society. But sometimes I regret to say, using myself as a bad example, you tend to say, okay, thank you, next. And this is not the way to go. They are the ones that can give constructive criticism, as you see on the screen. This change of mindset that you can read about here need not only to allow or suffer this feedback, but even support these messages that can, at the end of the day, only make better the public sector. These messages are crucial for peace and justice in any society. Too often, and in too many places, we see the opposite. Civil society and free media are under pressure, and the government becomes an enemy in a very negative dynamic. From repressive laws, increased restrictions on the work of activists, journalists, human rights defenders, we are only killing civil society, and that shouldn't happen. As you see to the left, maybe less pleasant, but very important. Civil society actually forces institutions to a reality check and to show what is it that government institutions actually are, the true face. Civil society provide a vital role of giving feedback to the public institutions, but sometimes the authorities of power, and I have used myself as a bad example of this, we mistakenly take this as an offensive, as a negative pressure, and that never produces a good results. This tension between public institutions and the civil society is the way it's supposed to be. That is what we call checks and balances in most of our constitutions. Next, please. We must protect civil society organizations and any organized form of civil society. Instead of fighting the civil space, the role of public institutions, national or international, subnational or local, is to support, strengthen, and empower civil society, to protect that civil space. And here I will tell you something else. The role of social media. Many government officials, not naming anyone, really see social media as a potential threat that can diminish their power or force them to succumb and leave positions that they have worked all their life to reach. But on the contrary, I believe that the civil space, and this is what the UN promulgates, the civil space, it has to have this level of transparency and inclusion as to indeed provide for these check and balances that every society should have. We have to encourage participation by all groups in democratic processes. We have to promote laws and policies to that effect. We have to contribute to an enabling environment for civil space, and we have to support more systematic participation of civil society with special attention to marginalized groups such as women, disabled people, young people, ethnic or religious minorities. Next, please. In this dialogue and partnership that we must establish with civil society organizations, you see to the left what indeed is a conception of what indeed an open civil space should be and the results that emanate from that. An open civic space will result in a variety of better outcomes for any society. So you see the freedom of expression, association, and assembly, and the right to participate, and the security of those who speak up in a virtuous cycle should be permanently should be ensured at all times. The results are very positive, that you have a variety of voices, that you have options tailored to the needs of the particular moment in that society, and you have candid feedback. Yes, there should be respect, there should be a certain level of the discussion, we should avoid fake news, but not at the expense of castigating that because some people feel attacked by social media and by those voices. Other results will be better responses to how public policy should be shaped and implemented, a stronger buy-in, because we have to remember that whatever the government does is for the people, by the people, through the people, and it should be indeed with a level of ownership from the communities that we serve. We will have indeed, if we do this, more sustainable peace, better development outcomes, more resilient societies. And remember, at the United Nations, we have this permanent invitation to anyone listening. And I tell you again today, as we did yesterday, please embrace the Sustainable Development Goals. Please embrace our views for the Agenda 2030 for Sustainable Development. It is yours. It's not the United Nations ownership. It is something that we promulgated, postulated, and debated, but indeed, in September 2015, it was debated, negotiated, redesigned by the whole of the world, represented by 193 presidents, prime ministers, ministers of foreign affairs that adopted the Sustainable Development Goals. It's a roadmap for public policies, a roadmap for the fight, the global fight against poverty, the protection of the environment, best or better educational systems, health systems, and so on. Next, please. The late Nelson Mandela, that some of us admire, used to say that if we want any significant development, we must co-opt civil society. We have to engage with it. We have to foster it. We don't have to fear it. Next, please. I wanted, as I say, to give a more specific invitation to anyone listening today. What you're going to read, I hope, empowers you, if you didn't know, to actually formally, officially, be part of the debate at the United Nations. The first venue by which non-governmental organizations took a role in formal UN deliberations was in 1945. Let me pause there. I really need to make an emphasis. This is not something that is happening in the recent decade or the last 20 years or so. This is something that was envisioned, the participation of civil society at the United Nations at the very beginning, at the San Francisco Conference in 1945, and the actual launch of the United Nations organization to replace the failed League of Nations in October the 24th of 1945, the ECOSOC was part of it. But what is the ECOSOC? The Economic and Social Council of the United Nations is there. It still exists. You go to New York and you participate in those meetings, you should be granted access, or you can do it virtually. But I can tell you gladly that more than 700 non-governmental organizations have consultative status at ECOSOC from the beginning, and now we go beyond 5,000. So you are invited, if your organization has something to say, to be part of this global dialogue. Article 71 of the UN Charter opened the door by providing all these arrangements for consultation with non-governmental organizations. And this was indeed, in my humble opinion, visionary in 1945. Today is part of our common narrative, is part of what is expected. It wasn't at the time. And I simply commemorate and rejoice to understand that our organization more than 70 years ago saw the need for civil society participation. Now, consultative status is granted by ECOSOC upon recommendation of the Committee on NGOs, which is composed by 19 member states. I'm going to explain how. Next, please. Who is eligible? I'm not going to read the whole thing, but the second paragraph, an NGO must have been in existence and officially recognized by our government for at least 2 years, must have an established headquarters, a democratically elected, adopted constitution, should have the authorities to speak on behalf of its members, should have a representative structure, appropriate mechanisms of accountability and democratic and transparent decision-making processes. The basic resources of the organization must be derived mainly from contributions of the national affiliates or other components from individual members. If you represent an organization like that and you are still not accredited to ECOSOC and to the United Nations, please do so. Next, please. Here you have, you just Google that, from 1945, again, the resolution and on the decision of the Economic and Social Council that actually says officially what I'm saying. ECOSOC is one, as you may know, one of the 5 principal organs of the United Nations system. ECOSOC proper, the General Assembly, as you will remember, has 193 member states, all the governments of the world. Then the Security Council have 15 member states, 15 members, 5 with veto power, the permanent members. Then there are transitory, and then ECOSOC consists of 54 members of the United Nations elected by the General Assembly. The ECOSOC coordinates economic, social, and related work of the 14 United Nations specialized agencies, functional commissions, and 5 regional commissions. It serves as the central forum for discussing international, economic, and social issues, and for formulating policy recommendations addressed to member states and the United Nations system as a whole. If you want to join, you boys, to our mandate to promote higher standards of living, full employment, and economic and social progress, identifying solutions to international, economic, social, and health problems, please join us. We need you. We need civil society, vibrant civil society participation at the UN. Next, please. I'm not going to tell you how ECOSOC works. We can do that in other instances, but you can read on the screen, and you can indeed simply go to the ECOSOC website. Next, please. I do want to tell you, however, that there are 9 functional commissions at the ECOSOC, and that your voice can be heard in this dynamic. There is the Commission on the Status of Women, the Commission on Sustainable Development, the Commission for Social Development, the United Nations Forum on Forests, the Commission on Population and Development, the Commission on Science and Technology for Development, the Commission on Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice, the Commission on Narcotic Drugs, and the Statistical Commission. Next, please. Let me wrap up with the next 2 or 3 slides, and thank you for listening again. There is something called the Integrated Civil Society Organizations System. It's developed, managed by the Department of Economic and Social Affairs of the UN Secretariat, our colleagues at DESA in New York. And this integrated civil society organization system facilitates interactions between civil society organizations and the UN as a whole. DESA should be understood as the Secretariat, the core of the United Nations. To the right, you see how many organizations per region we have. I'm very happy to tell you, after more than a decade with the UN, that number, the number of organizations from Africa, reflects what the United Nations should be in terms of membership, space, access, and so on. We have more NGOs from Africa than from any other continent, and that must be celebrated. There you see the fields of activity, economic and social are perhaps the most important, but there are many others that are important. And then you see the number of organizations that are under special status, consultative status, general status, or the roster, and then the type of organization. Next, please. Here in this invitation, after we recognize the role of civil society in this invitation for you listening today to join your voice to this global dialogue, let me tell you that consultative status of an organization has been granted to 5,593 NGOs. This number varies every year, and gladly so. There are 3 types of consultative status, as I just mentioned: general, special, and rostered. Most new accreditations are in the special category. Consultative status provides NGO with access to not only ECOSOC, this is very important, but also to its many subsidiary bodies, as the commissions that I just read, to the various human rights mechanisms, to the United Nations, to ad hoc processes, as well as special events organized by the President of the General Assembly. Remember, ECOSOC accreditation is separate and distinct from NGOs who are associated with the UN Department of Global Communications. And also, it must be said that organizations that are fostered, created, supported, or emanate from any government cannot get this access as civil society organizations. Next, please. Very good. Thank you for allowing me to give you some ruminations on what the role of civil society is from the perspective of the UN and on behalf of UNITAR. And also, thank you for listening to this invitation to join us, to join your voice to this global dialogue. Thank you so much. Back to you, Dr. Alexander.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mahia, for this wonderful presentation. It's really very enriching, like always. And we wish you all the best for the rest of the day. And thank you for being with us and for your partnership. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Well, next presentation will be a video on the work of GHNI. It's a presentation on Southeast Asia, challenges case study. And this presentation will be presented by Mr. Inman, who is GHNI regional field leader for Southeast Asia. His passion is to see communities in the region reach their potential by helping them maximize the resources and skills they already possess. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Inman, to be with us today, and thank you for making this presentation for us. It's over to you. Thank you.
Our organization likes to use the word sustainable to describe the work we do. That word has a lot of different meanings, but when we use the term to describe our development activity, it describes development that continues when the external initiative or external resources are no longer available. We see sustainability achieved when we successfully equip communities to apply their own initiative and resources to the issues that they're facing. The COVID-19 pandemic has really highlighted the value of this approach. Our staff regularly visit villages that we work in, gather community members together, provide training, and discuss the issue that community is facing. So when we're suddenly not allowed to gather together for meetings, or in many cases, simply visit a community, it can be a real challenge for the program to continue. Our teams did an amazing job adapting, shifting to one-on-one meetings and long-distance phone calls to continue encouraging and guiding key community leaders through the development process. What we saw was that communities that had reached a certain point in our development program, that is, communities that had formed a committee, they made substantial gains in progress even though our teams had limited access. In one cluster of Indonesian villages we call Polowali, we saw the local committee temporarily shift their focus from their lack of clean water to COVID-19 response. They set up hand washing stations at the entrance to the village, initiated mask making programs that were converted into small business, and made their own hand sanitizer. And through all of that, they never lost focus. At the end of 2020, the first village saved enough money to drill 2 wells.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Saya atas nama Sulkia dari Balanipa, Kabupaten Polewali Mandar. Saya sebagai mewakili masyarakat Balanipa, sebelum ketemu GH ini, masyarakat Balanipa sebenarnya punya ide untuk air bersih, tapi susah untuk terrealisasikan karena kita tidak ada dampingan, masyarakatnya juga belum terlalu kompak. Tapi setelah ketemu GH ini, ide-ide yang kami punya bisa tersalurkan, bisa terrealisasikan karena kita sudah mendapat dampingan. Ide yang sudah terrealisasikan di sini yaitu air bersih. Sebelum ada GH ini, kita bersusah payah untuk mengambil air bersih di sungai, apalagi pada saat cuaca sedang buruk, medannya juga kurang baik. Dan setelah ketemu GHNI, kita bisa menikmati air bersih di rumah, manfaatnya juga sudah kita rasakan. Terima kasih untuk GHNI.
2 villages have access to clean water now. A third community is raising funds to contribute to their new wells. GHNI has contributed 50% of the material cost for each well, with community members raising the remaining funds and providing labor. The first village committee, with their water worries over, has shifted their focus to another old problem, sanitation. They plan to begin building latrines this quarter.
Thank you very much, Mr. Inman, for all what you're doing in Southeast Asia. And it is really impressive to see all the work is being done there. And please, to all our participants, if you have any questions and if you are interested in one of these regions, please contact Mr. Inman or contact us and we will forward your message to him. Thank you so much. Well, our next presentation will be a video on the work of GHNI as well, but this time is from Upper Egypt with a focus on human rights. So the subject has been prepared by Mr. Adli, who is GHNI field leader for Egypt. Mr. Adli is the founder of the Children Development Program, CDP, and has been working in more than 40 villages in Upper Egypt and Nubia. So please, thank you very much for being with us and welcome, Mr. Adli, and the floor is yours.
The Nubians. The Nubians live in Upper Egypt and last part of Egypt, in area called Aswan. Half of them live in Sudan and half of them live in Egypt.
And we love really to serve these people because we feel like they poor educated, they don't have really a good services in their villages and islands, and we really want to fill this gap and to help them.
We now have one good model in a village called Adendan. Adendan, one of the great village because we have unity between the villagers and we have champions or key persons there. Now we have committee in Aswan, more than 12 persons, and they are so interested for their problems. They usually using their own resources or local resources. And now we have also volunteers, they visit homes and they take care of the children and women and teenagers. We have a good training.
عملنا حضانة البري سكول تنمية 25 مهارة للطفل، وإن الطفل يطلع طفل سوي وما يكونش طفل عنيد ولا يكون طفل سيء. والحمد لله وصلنا للمجموعة، أول مجموعة أخذت 15 طفل، وصلنا بيهم العيل دلوقتي عرف إزاي ينظم حياته.
The school teachers how to deal with the children, how to respect them. Because in this area, many teachers usually beat the children, usually say bad words to them because they are not study well or something like that.
I'm teaching them English. I want to be like a part of this ministry, and I want to go to and reach the Nubians. And I just love to sit with them, talking and teaching them English and open doors, because when they see us, they see like a different thing than their lives.
We teach the community in Nubian how to deal with the children, how to respect them, how to raise up in good relationship, and how to build children from the early age.
رسالة التعامل ازاي الواحد يتعامل مع الاولاد بدون قسوه، بدون ما يزعق، بدون انت فاشل، وبعدين انك انت تقول للواد انت فاشل وانت مش عارف ايه، فعلا بيهبط الواد احباط شديد جدا. نوصل الرساله دي للامهات، يعني انا زوجتي ما جاتش بس هوصل لها الرساله دي.
اولادي او كده ما اظلمهمش مثلا زي ما انا اتظلمت، او حتى مثلا كنت زي ما كنت بتضرب ما اضربهمش، لا احاول اطلع الحاجه كويسه، يعني حاجه مثلا اتحرمت منها اديها.
لازم اعامل اولادي كويس واكلمهم كلام كويس عنهم وليهم، يعني ما اعملش معاهم اللي هم الاهل عملوه معايا، واحاول اطور معاملتي معاهم واعملهم احسن ما اتعاملت.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adli, for this presentation. It shows how important the work among the Nubians in Egypt and the rural villages. Please, if you're interested to go and visit Egypt or the GILPP work there, please contact us and we will connect you with Mr. Adli. Thank you so much. Well, now I want to move to our next distinguished speaker, and she will be Dr. Agadir Jouihan. She is the General Director of Princess Taghreed Institute for Development and Training in Jordan. Dr. Agadir is women's empowerment specialist who has worked throughout her life to ensure that she becomes a truly influential change in her community. Dr. Agadir will be speaking on the topic of civil society role and presenting a case study from Jordan. Dr. Agadir, it's a pleasure to have you with us today. Thank you very much. Welcome, and the floor is yours. Dr. Agadir? Okay, she seems like she's disconnected. Well, okay, maybe you were just, this is just a technical thing. Okay, yeah, I think we will move to our next distinguished speaker. She is Dr. Hannah Amelia Vandayani. Thank you so much for being with us today. Dr. Hannah is the founder and the president of Yesan Ponduk Kish. I hope that I'm saying it right. An awards winner social foundation. She is known for her compassion for the poor and outcasts, her ability to build relationships with people from all social, economic, ethnic, religious, and national background, and her key role in strengthening Indonesia as a global model for unity in diversity. She is CNN Indonesia Hero for 2017. Dr. Hannah will be speaking on the topic of civil society role and will be presenting a case study from Indonesia. Welcome, Dr. Hannah. It's a pleasure to have you. Please, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for the privilege of being able to speak in this very prestigious, in this seminar with GILPP and UNITAR. I was so encouraged by what Mr. Alex Vija said, because It's very encouraging. I'm not very good at doing statistic or not very doing some social media because I'm a field worker. But I'm so encouraged to hear that we, as civil society, we really have important roles to bring impact and transformation in our communities because we work with our hearts and we work with our callings, and we want to work with our clean hands, clean hearts, and clean morals. And then for 30 years we have been doing work for the poor of the poorest in our foundation called the Yayasan Pondok Kasih House of Love Foundation. And that is, I want to share with you the screen. So I'm really very thankful that I'm able to share what we do, how we thrive during the international crisis of COVID-19. Actually, when the crisis hit the whole world, it was a real blow to us also because I work among the poorest, and then we receive like projects and donations to really help our poor people in our three-pronged programs. But when COVID hit and our income declined a lot, but we still have more poor people to take care. And then what we can do is only, well, we just pray to God, and then we took very small steps with whatever we had. We try to do in the communities. And what we do is we try to strengthen our partnership with all the spheres of the societies. And now I can say that it is what has happened is really beyond what my wildest imagination. So I want to share with you a little bit about my country, just a few minutes about my country. My country is an archipelago. It is most populous, the fourth most populous Muslim majority country. It's rich in culture and resources, very diverse in races, cultures, religions, because it comprises of 17,000 islands, more than 1,300 tribes, 633 ethnic groups, and 6 recognized religions. You can see that it is very, very diverse. And our national motto is Bhinneka Tunggal Ika, which means unity in diversity. Even though there were challenges that we have got to face, but we really thank God that our country is built upon a very strong foundation and ideology, which is known as the 5 principles. And the 5 principles of our country covers almost all aspects in human life, because the first principle is believe in God. So we the people in our country, we recognize 6 religions in our country, and we are allowed to worship in our own conviction. That is principle number 2. And principle number 1 and principle number 2 is we have to really care for our relationship with one another, especially the poor and those who are different from us, so that we can be united as a nation. That is principle number 3. And afterwards, we have a guided democracy. And then together, when we are united, then we can achieve our social justice. So it is what is actually the goal of our country. But as I said before, for 70 years, there were several human rights that had not been achieved, namely the civil rights of the poor and underprivileged that had no IDs, no birth certificates, no marriage certificates whatsoever. And that is what I had been striving for more than 20 years. And now, as what Mr. Major says, well, there has been a breakthrough that the government has already issued rules and laws that now make it very simple and very accessible to all the poor people. So this is what I say. Now, so this is our vision, is the underprivileged are transformed. The poor people are transformed and become whole individuals, independent with good characters, and become agents of transformation through our holistic, integrated, sustainable, and transforming programs. Now, through the COVID-19, when I was thinking what we should do, because the fact was that we saw the poor people, they suffer a lot. But what should we do? So we just took small steps. And this is what we did, that we moved all our divisions, our social humanitarian, our relational and partnership, and our spiritual division all move to the communities to help the poor. So our social, this is what we strengthen, because after 20 years, after 30 years of existence, for the last 20 years, we have been building very strong relationship with reconciliation and everything with different religious groups. And then we have also built relationship and strengthened our collaboration, because we integrate our programs, especially our our programs for the civil rights, that is from SDG number 16 and also 17. We try to strengthen our relationship with the governments, because we need the governments to cover us and to endorse our activities. But we also have to strengthen our relationship with the business people, because we cannot do without them, because we are in the front line, and we need the people from the supply line to provide our need. So we also work together with the business people. So here, like with all our activities, like issuing thousands of birth certificates, we work with the business people. To date, we have actually issued about 164 birth certificates and 22,000 marriage certificates, and initiated in 18 provinces of Indonesia as never before, because it was after 70 years of our independence that we had a breakthrough of this, after our mass wedding in 2015, when we married 5,115 couples. So we strengthened our relationship with the different spheres: religion, government, business people, and also with the millennials, with the students, because we also organized festival, youth festival, that we invite all the executive students from the 34 provinces of Indonesia, so that we can work with the millennials how to do to work together for the poor. So we invite all the spheres of the activity to go down to the poor to serve together. And by doing this, we did not realize that we enhance harmony and unity amongst religions, with the government institutions, with the business people, and also that help us bridge the two gaps that cause all the problems in the world, that is the social gap and the ideological and also the racial gap. But during the COVID-19, we moved all our divisions to go and reach out to the poor, like this. So this is all the packages that we received. We have received, this is the distribution that we have. I was very surprised to see how God provided us with all our needs. And I haven't put here that we also received 26 containers of gift boxes for the children. That means that we have about 170,000 boxes for the trauma healing of the children. So this is what I have now. We move, this is our orphanage. This in our orphanage, we are blessed with all different kinds of staples. So we may lack in our finance, but God bless us with different kinds of food and with supplements, with vitamins and everything, that our orphanage can also distribute staples to the poor neighbors, and our elderly home can also distribute help to the neighboring poor elderly people. And we also moved our community health to give health education to the children in the slums and also to women, because that is what we can do. We move our community development. We all make our own face shields. We make masks. We make hazmat suits to be distributed to the communities and to poor clinics. And we also train our community people how to disinfect their own communities. And then we also get a lot of medical supplies that we can distribute. It's really amazing, because this is beyond what I can think of, that people would come to us because they trust us. So for 30 years of our existence, we have tried to build integrity, that people can trust us, because that's number one, that we can work if people trust us. So we move all our divisions. And this is also, we move our community education. With our cars, we also help the children in the slums, and we teach them how to do health protocols. And then we were blessed also with thousands of shoes that we can help the community people. We also help in our mental spiritual division. We help prisoners. We are entrusted to serve in about 20 prisons in East Java. And then we also move our fellowships for the poor people in about 70 communities. You can see here, this is beyond what we can think, because during the COVID, when everything was so bad, and then in our country especially, what we call it, the family violence is at rampant, and then we have a lot of divorces in the communities, but we can enjoy our working together with the poor people, helping the other poor people. So we have staples, and we have vitamins, we have shoes, and we have a lot of good things. And then in addition to that, last April in East Indonesian islands called Kupang, Flores, and Sumba, there was a big disaster, so fatalities that caused a lot of death. And these islands, which were already not very developed, suffered even much more. And then we all went to that island, and then we helped them with food staples, clothes, medicine, toiletries, masks, and we also sent 2 smart cars to help them the education. And we also helped them with homes and schools and church repair. And at the same time, we were entrusted at this moment. I'm so happy to tell you that at this moment, we have donors who wants to develop 5 poorest and most devastated villages in NTT. That's why when I heard from Joshua Inman, how he developed one of the village in Indonesia, I would also like to work together with UNITAR and Geneva Institute, how to develop these 5 villages in NTT, in Kupang. When Hall was alive, he was very enthusiastic to help me developing the villages in Kupang. But at that moment, it seemed it was so difficult, because in these islands, they have what you call the dowry system. And it is the dowry system that is like, and put them in poverty, because there's a great demand when a man wants to propose and to take a woman as his wife, then he will have to pay a huge dowry. That is according to the tradition, and that tradition causes them to put in a cycle of poverty, because if they cannot pay the dowry system, then they cannot even the church or the the religious leaders in that area will not marry them will not sanction their marriage in the churches. And unless they have marriage certificates from the church, they cannot go to the registry office to arrange for a marriage certificates. And because of this high dowry system, so many of the couples that cannot afford the dowry, they're just allowed to live together and have children. And because of this illegal relationship, the children have no birth certificates. Millions and thousands of children have no birth certificates. So this is what we plan to do as a response to our to NTT response. That first we send cars to help them education, because in these places where the villages have no electricity, the children cannot study online with their telephones because they have no electricity. So the teachers will have to walk from one village to another, where the children gather, and sometimes they will have to come home very late. That really grieved my heart, because for the teachers and with very, very low salary, they have to walk to meet with the children. So we were planning of having like a motorbike to facilitate the teachers, that the teachers can go to all these places to help the children with the education. So that is what we have. That's what we planned. And then we also found out that in the most devastated islands in Kupang, where everything was was covered by stones and mud, and they had nothing else. They had no clean waters. I have had donors who want to give us a solar water system to provide water in 5 villages. So when like Hall knows how to develop villages, I would really love to have your assistance in helping us how to develop these villages. But at the same time, we are going to also help all the children in these disaster areas first with the birth certificates. We want to make sure that there are no children in these islands that have no birth certificates, because without any IDs, without any birth certificates, even though the children exist, but they are nobodies because they cannot have any access to education, they cannot have access to health, and when they grow up, they have nothing. So that is what we have been fighting for, but we really thank God that because of the breakthrough that, because in 2015, now the procedures have been made very simple, and yet they are still ignorant and they are still very, very afraid to come to the government. So we have got to go and to their places to be proactive and to look for them. And then we also want to do trauma healings for the children with the gift boxes, with goodie bags, with character training. And last but not least, that is the solar energy of water supply in 5 villages. I will show you some of the pictures. This is what we have done. So this is the disaster relief that we did in Kupang. So we managed to help about 37 villages. You see how poorly they live. And at that moment, as it is said, because we are from civil society, we have the freedom to speak for the voiceless. So our doctors went to the local authority and they spoke that they were willing to go even to the most devastated places where no local doctors dared to go. But because of their courage, so all the government, the local government moved all the other doctors to do the same and go to the isolated places that was unreached before. So these are the places. So this is the disaster relief that we did in NTT Kupang, and we also did it in Flores. So the people live very, very poorly. So they really need help. And then this is the trauma healing that we did for the children. So we sent 2 smart cars because the smart cars is very versatile. It has purposes. So we want to help the children with the birth certificates. We want to help the children with the education, and we also want to help these communities with solar water system. So I'm really expecting that Geneva Institute and UNITAR will help us realize this, our dream to come true, because we have already helped donors to help us with the solar systems. But you know, as I come from a philanthropic foundation, I'm a working people. I do not know how to do the system. I do not know how to make like good media, social media presentation, but this is what I can do. I'm really very thankful that I'm given the opportunity to share in this beautiful event. And this is our prayer: be peaceful, my country, because we want people to be peace with God and peace with others, and be united, my nation, so that we can be united, so that we can achieve social justice for all. And I'm so glad in one of the event of the United Nations in Bali, the title is Unity and Diversity. I think this is what we can, in the future, contribute to the world, that we have that Pancasila, and that we can, with the Pancasila, we can enhance unity and harmony amongst different kinds of religions and different kinds of tribes and social strata. Thank you very much for the opportunity for me to share. God bless you all.
Thank you very, very much, Dr. Hannah, for your presentation and for your tireless work to help the poor and to love them and to really to serve them with all of your heart, with all the means you can. On behalf of GILPP and JHNI, we are very happy to pursue our relationship with you and our partnership together. Thank you so much. It was an honor to have you today with us. Thank you so much. Well, I will move to our next distinguished speaker, Dr. Agadir Jouhan from Jordan. She is the General Director of Princess Tagreed Institute for Development and Training. Dr. Agadir is a women's empowerment specialist who has worked throughout her life to ensure that she becomes a truly influential changer in her community. Well, she will be speaking on the civil society role and presenting a case study from Jordan. Dr. Agadir, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. I'm so happy that you're giving me this opportunity to talk about our institute, and especially in the pandemic situation. I think that we all need support and love and a push to have hope for a better, inshallah, year and to finish from this pandemic situation. I would just want to give you a brief about the Princess Taghreed Institute. Princess Taghreed Institute, it's a non-profit organization. It was established in 10 years ago, 2010. We've started actually with a vision of helping orphans and abandoned girls after the age of 18. You know that the Ministry of Social Development and even the foster cares in all the world, after the age of 18, anyone reaches this age have to go to their local community. They have to continue their studies. They enter the local community as a citizens. But because of Jordan and the tribal, thing, everyone, the first thing they ask any girl is, what is your father's name? What is your mother's name? What is your family name? And those girls, unfortunately, they don't have any families. So in 2010, we've started the initiative to become an umbrella for those girls, to work on them psychologically, to help them to be empowered, to gain respect, to be independent, and to provide them the job opportunity. We became like a woman hub, a woman empowerment hub. And of course, with the help and support of His Majesty King Abdullah, we have managed to change the legislation of the Ministry of Social Development. And we have started to have a program from the age 18 until 24, where we can help those girls and they can come immediately to us after the age of 18 from the orphanages directly. We give them like empowerment sessions. We give them flats to live in under our supervision. We give them a restricted freedom to go out and to experience the world, but with supervision and coaching. We've managed to change the legislation, as I told you, and after 24 years old, they start, going into the local community with a good, decent job opportunity. Some of them got married. Some of them, actually, I consider most of them as my own girls. I always take care of them because they need to be related to someone. I was fortunate enough and blessed to give away a lot of my girls from my house, actually, and they've started their own life. And my husband also is involved in this. Through this experience, we've started, of course, going into the local community and to poverty pockets. And since 2016, we've started, going to poverty pockets, studying the resources in those areas, see how can we help them. The most important thing and our vision is how can we train those ladies and the underprivileged to become productive. And in order to fulfill all the cycle, we always look at sustainability. How can we also train them, and then afterwards we market their products and we upgrade their also products into a very high up standard thing. The good thing also that lately we've started also working on working with tourism and other ministries so that we can collaborate together and help to do the sustainability. I'm sure that most of us, most of our, all over the world, the big challenge that we always face is sustainability. And in order to maintain this sustainability, we need to work together, we need to join forces, we need to be optimistic and to fulfill all the gaps that we usually face. Of course, what we do, as I told you, we've started with the poverty pockets. The good thing that we always feel that we are not a charity CBO. No, we are a productive institute that train and employ and recruit job opportunities. We've worked with a lot of international organizations, GIZ, EU, USAID, UNDP. You know that Jordan is considered to be one of the countries that always have refugees and that always have a lot of programs and input especially with Iraq condition and with the Syrian situation, and at the beginning, of course, with Palestinian. So we've started, working in the hosting communities, working with Syrian refugees, Iraqi refugees, and we've started also to help those ladies to have the social cohesion and to live in the provinces in a way where they can feel that it's their home. Because to be honest with you, no one knows when this war will end. And a lot of people, they're living for ages now and staying in Jordan. So they have to have this beautiful social cohesion in order to maintain their life and continue. We have a lot of productive projects. As I told you, we have catering business, we have a bakery, we have Dolce Futuro, which is Italian gelato, we have Dar Ni'me, which is a hub. It's a house of bliss. It's a hub where it's a coffee and tea house. People can come, they can have lunch or breakfast or dinner, and all the food that is presented is from the ladies, the home-based businesses. So it gives the ladies the opportunity to gain money while she is in her home. So we take all the food, traditional processed food like labane, yogurt, thyme, and other things that we are used to in the Arab world, and we sell it. And if anyone likes this product, there's a small showroom in the House of Bliss where they can buy it and support those women. We, of course, we have also oil distillation and other things. The other thing, where we are, I have to tell you that in the past 4 years, we really expanded. So we are now in Amman, we have 3 locations. In Jarash, which is in the north, Ajloun in the north, Irbid in the north, Tal al-Rumman, it's in the middle, Zarqa is into the east, Karak is in the south, and also Ghor Safi south, and Mafraq, which is east, beside the Iraqi borders. Each project, it's a full sustainable project. It gives a lot of training for women. We train every 6 months more than 200 to 300 women, and they take, certificates, and we try to also sell their goods or give them a job opportunity. Of course, today I know that our main issue is the COVID-19 situation. And I have to tell you that we had a very special experience in the COVID-19. Maybe the thing that really helped us a lot is our vision as an institute. We always work with love, positiveness, and hope. And we believe that because, as I told you from the beginning, when we've started as an institute, we dealt with orphans and abandoned girls. And the only way to help them was through love and through positiveness. Because, there's nothing like being loved and feeling that someone is thinking of you and giving you the protection and the sustainability. So in COVID time, we've started, we are a productive institute, and the sectors that was closed in COVID, most of it was, the problem was that most of it was the sectors that was closed. So like the catering, not the catering, like let's say the tourism, and we really rely on tourism and products. Our products all itself to touristic area. We are a training hub, so training was closed. So the only thing that worked with us was the catering. So we've started, shifting our vision towards home delivery, online shopping. We've tried also to focus on food and also tailoring. One of our projects is tailoring, and in order to, that the demand was really high on masks, for example. So we took the Jordan FDA for our masks, and we've started, selling the masks and opening job opportunities for all the girls that left their job from hotels and cafes and other places, because the sectors that was closed, a lot of people became unemployed. So immediately we've started giving a daily allowances through working with us. So we gave more than 50 job opportunity, and it was like rotation. So we kept on bringing the girls and the underprivileged ladies who lost their jobs to come and work either in the kitchen or in the tailor shop. Thank God, with God's will, we managed to link up with one of the big telecommunication company in Jordan. They produced more than 300 to 500,000 masks. So that was a very good, opportunity for us to provide the daily allowances for all those ladies to sustain their life. Other things that we really worked on was, from our experience, is to see where is the support from the government, such as, there was a lot of food boxes, distributing different kind of materials. So through our hubs, because we are in the poverty pockets and in villages, so we've managed to get a lot of these boxes and to affiliate with all the initiatives that have been done in Jordan, and to send to the poorest of the poor families through us and through our centers in the villages. The other thing that also we worked on was changing our labor contracts to flexible labor. You know that we had the defense law, and the defense law was very strict, and all the companies had a big challenge with it, because you cannot even blame the companies, and you cannot blame the employee, but at the same time it was a challenge for all of us. So we tried to work as a one big family, and to think of ways where we can sustain our income, the income of the ladies, but at the same time to afford it, because it was challenging. So we changed some of the contracts to flexible contracts. Some of them were working from home. Some of them started, reducing working hours to reduce daily expenses. We had part-timers, we had per piece, daily allowances, and shorter contracts. So that was one of our work. The other thing also, we have worked with the Social Security. There was a lot of new rules where the government have supported all the sectors, especially the damaged sectors, and we are considered one of the most infected sectors. So they've tried, to give us a percentage of the salaries of our employee. Our employee as PTI, the permanent one, is more than 140 employee. Our beneficiaries, it exceeds thousands of beneficiaries. So it was a very big challenge for everyone. Of course, the thing is that I always say that to focus on effective we worked on psychological aspect, because we as an empowerment institute, we really work with psychology. So some of the things that we worked on is how to bring all the people with all the challenges that they're having and the COVID situation, and to communicate with them, to help them how to face these challenges, to try to put some plans, positive plans, and to see who is in need more than the other one. So we had a lot of communication, effective communication that we worked on to overcome all the challenges that we had. But thank God, I can tell you that PTI was an few example in Jordan that sustained all her employees during the COVID pandemic situation. Whenever it was open, immediately we used to try to help as much as we can when there was no quarantine or it was a bit less hours. So we used to immediately go back and try to produce and try to find other alternatives to work with the community. I have to tell you that as a conclusion, I think that there was there was a very negative, of course, outcomes of the pandemic situation, but there was a good, also positive thing, as I think, as a mother and as a head of institute. One of the things that I would like to focus on, that what happened with us last year, it gave us time to think of our lives and a materialistic world. I think that people were really going towards a really shallow, not all the people, but a lot of people thinks of a shallow life. They used not to think about each other. They were away from humanity. And I'm telling you, as an expert in this field and as a field worker, and I felt that with the COVID situation, people started thinking of each other. We as an institute started having a lot of phone calls. We've started having a lot of donations, even if it was a very minimum donation, or at least support through buying our goods, through doing different kind of initiatives. I think that also it enlightened the concept of feeling with each other in a way that even if you have Jesus' principle says that if you want to, you have to share, to forgive and to share what you have with your brother, and to feel with your brother, and to feel his hunger, and to feed him. So all these, principles, I think that it came back. And this is what I felt. People became more knowledgeable. They've started, looking at the world as a one country. We started hearing about, all the challenges in all the world. Most of the people became more literate with technology and social media, and how to use all kind of social media and social communication. People, the families started sitting with each other, talking with each other, playing games, going back to the family bonds. So I think that there was a positive outcomes, and we needed what had happened to us to know that there's a real meaning, and there's a real, let's say, things that we should do. Sometimes life and work take us to a different level, but what happened to us made us think, am I doing the right thing? Am I helping others? Am I having the good vision? So that, for me, I think that was a wonderful thing. And we felt it as an institute. We felt the love, we felt the positiveness, we felt that we were becoming like a one big family. And I want to tell you, that in Global Hope, of course, for us and for Jordan, is a very important organization that have been working with us for quite a long time. And there has been a lot of support and love, and from all over the world through Global Hope. And I always say that we are all fortunate to be the way for others, and we are all fortunate to know each other and to build this beautiful friendship and network that can help people and that can really enlighten the hearts of others. And I always say that when there is a will, there is a way. And we are all visitors in this world. And what really matters is our legend and footprints. I want to say that the first time I attended GILPP in Geneva with the late Hal Jones, I have to tell you that for me, he was the most beautiful and wonderful soul that I have ever met. God bless his soul. We are all, we feel with Lana. We love you, Lana. We always think of you. We always pray for the soul of Hal. He was a legend. And I remember the first time I really attended the conference, I remember his words. He said that if you want to be a legend, you have to leave footprints. And that was really touching, and it really, it was like a focal point in my life that made me really think of life in a different way. And I always remember his words that love is what matters, the love and give and thinking of everyone all over the world and leaving a beautiful legend and footprints that everyone will remember you. And believe me, this is what Hal have done. He is always in our heart. We always remember him, and he have left a beautiful legend that we all want to really continue and make sure that it will stay, and it will be more bigger and bigger, and that we have to teach it to our children and to the generation to come. Thank you so much.
Dr. Agadir, thank you so much. Shukran Katir. محبتك. Thank you very much, because the message we had today from you is a message of love, share and give. And thank you very much for doing all what you're doing for the poor in Jordan and for the refugees from Syria and Iraq. Please have all our blessings, and we will pursue our relationships and our partnership with you, that's for sure. Thank you so much. Well, I will move now to our next presentation. It is from our distinguished speaker, Professor Terry Dalrymple. He's the founder and coordinator of the Global SHE Network. He's the vice president and co-founder of the Alliance of Transformational Ministry and catalyst for poverty alleviation with Transform World. Professor Dalrymple will present a video on civil society on the Million Village Vision. Professor, the floor is yours. Welcome again today. Thank you.
I have within me, and you likely have within you, a desire to make a difference in life. That some part of the world will be different because we've been here. I want to focus in this short video on a part of the world that's often forgotten, out of sight and out of mind. In rural poor communities in the developing world, there are approximately 1.3 billion people living in multidimensional poverty. They live without clean water, access to adequate sanitation. They lack food security. Their children often die before the age of 5 from preventable causes. They lack access to healthcare, education, and business opportunity. And they live in approximately 1 million villages. These facts paint a clear picture for us of what we can do to end extreme poverty in the world. We can improve the quality of life for 1.3 billion people living in approximately 1 million villages. As government officials, lawmakers, and servants of the people, you have an extraordinary, incredible opportunity to make a difference for the poor. Your policies and projects can inspire hope and change for the world's poorest. You've heard it said that with great opportunity comes great responsibility, and that's true. As lawmakers, you probably feel the weight every day of that responsibility and are looking perpetually for the answer to a single question: how? How can we use the resources that have been trusted to us to make the greatest impact among the world's poor? I am privileged to be the founder of an organization, a network really, of hundreds of organizations doing transformational community development work in 136 countries. Many of the colleagues here today from Global Hope Network International are doing transformational development work, likely in the countries you govern. My colleagues and I have all seen communities lifted out of cycles of poverty and disease, and then multiply that success to communities around. These movements of change have inspired in us a vision to see movements of transformational community development overcoming poverty in 1 million villages. Our commitment is simple: we commit ourselves to support efforts of transformational development that lift communities out of cycles of poverty and disease and multiply that success to villages around. If you'd like to engage with people with such a commitment in your country, if you'd like to train people in your country to do transformational development in a way that sweeps the countryside, then I invite you to get with MedHat or any of the Global Hope Network people here. They'll be happy to connect with you.
Professor Terry, thank you so much. And it is really very touching to see all these needs and all what you are contributing to alleviate poverty. Yeah, and as our founder, Hal Jones, used to say, it is one person at a time, one village at a time, and we will make a difference. Thank you so much for sharing this with us. Well, our next distinguished speaker is Professor Mike Shea. Professor, welcome today. He's the founder and executive director for Leadership to Impact, a nonprofit platform aiming at equipping public policy leaders and business professionals to help them bring transformation. Professor Shea is an advisory board member at Geneva Institute for Leadership and Public Policy as well. He will be speaking today on the value-based leadership during times of crisis. Professor Shea, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, MedHat. Greetings from Memphis, Tennessee, the birthplace of rock and roll. And I'm happy to be a part of another Geneva Institute. And as we've walked through the different presentations over the last couple of days, our eyes have been opened anew to the crisis that exists in our world. The nations where we work, the people we love, have had to bear the greatest burden of this COVID crisis. And as we've listened to the different presentations, we have become aware that personal responsibility is the beginning of bringing positive solutions to our existing problems. Oftentimes, we look at what's happening around us and we want to assign fault. Some of the crisis is just a health problem. But the crisis, as we've looked at, has been exacerbated by poor leadership at times, by fake news, by the media, and often things have happened that have made a bad crisis even worse. But the path forward in bringing solutions is to not point fingers at people who are part of the problem, but by taking personal responsibility for the response that we have. And we've seen in transformational community development and in our transformational leadership development that personal responsibility is the place that we begin, but it's not just responsibility for behavior or for vision and mission, but it begins with taking responsibility for the values that we have. And we're aware that all leadership is based on values. Good leadership is based on good values. Bad leadership is built on bad values. And the problem is that crises do not always lead to good values. We've all experienced fear in the past year. We've all experienced anger, and good values never grow from fear and anger, and neither does good leadership. And most often, a crisis will increase bad values. It's in a time of crisis that leaders begin to excuse or justify things that they would know otherwise would be wrong. And so it's in a time of crisis that some leaders are refined like gold. They emerge better, but it's never by accident. And so when gold is put into the fire, the heat removes impurities. And in the same way, a good leader with good values can become a better leader to bring help and hope to their people. And there are three choices that leaders have to make in order for them to emerge from a crisis better able to bring transformation. They have to release, they have to grow, and they have to adopt. And we're going to look at those three things briefly this morning. And we're going to look at Nelson Mandela as a model for good leadership. We know, I think all of us know his story. His life was a life of crisis, a life of suffering. He suffered extreme racism under the policies of apartheid. He was arrested for his response to apartheid and spent 27 years in prison. The goal of the prison guards was to make his life miserable day after day. But he left prison a different man. The crisis turned what was good in him into gold, but it took three choices for him to do that. And so we're going to look very briefly at those three choices that he made. First of all, some values are harmful and they must end. You know, in times of history, bad values will make things even worse. At the beginning of World War II, even before it began, Neville Chamberlain had a value of peace, and peace is a good value. It was normal to have that value following the war that was supposed to end all wars. And so he wanted peace at any cost. The problem was that value was not helpful in the time of crisis that the world was about to enter. And so some good values must be released because they're harmful, and some bad values must be released. Some of us forget that the reason that Nelson Mandela went to prison was that he was a terrorist. He was involved in planning terrorist bombings in South Africa. He went to prison, and in prison, he released the value of violence. He began to see that violence was not going to bring peace and harmony in his nation, and that the value that he had adopted and lived by was not going to move him forward. The second thing that must happen is we must improve the good values that we have. If we want to be worth the gold potential that we have, the things that are good must get better. Mandela said to his wife, or wrote to her in 1975, he said, "At least if for nothing else, the cell gives you the opportunity to look daily into your entire conduct, to overcome the bad and develop whatever is good in you." Now, I've been helping leaders identify their personal values internationally for the last 15 years. And one of the things that I see in world leaders is this, that most leaders have good stated values, but often those values do not go any deeper than measuring the other people's values and lifestyle around them. I went in to meet with the capacity building director of the Amhara region in Ethiopia early on in my work with Global Hope Network. And I gave him my business card. It said I was involved in leadership development. He threw my card down on the desk and said, "That's what I do." And I said, "Okay." I asked him what he did, and he told me. And I said, "I noticed on your walls of your buildings that you have 10 values that you want the leaders of the Amara region to practice as leaders. And I started naming these values, and he smiled. He was happy that I noticed these strong transformational values. And I said, now the leader of the building, when he walks into the building, he measures everyone in the building by these 10 values except one person. Who does he leave out? And the capacity building director smiled, and he sat back and he said he leaves out himself. And I said, would you be interested in leadership training that would help leaders become self-aware and measure their own lives and behavior by their values? He called the president of the region and said, we need this training. And so leaders often have good values, but they're not owned values. They are aspirational values. I have a leadership activity where I give leaders 50 values cards, all of them good, none of them bad. And we have 5 categories for them to place these cards in: always practiced, often practiced, sometimes practiced, seldom practiced, and never practiced. Well, all of the values are good. And so the leaders have the tendency to put all of them in the top 2 categories. And in order for them to become honest and transparent, we ask them to look at their schedule. Your values are what you live, not what you say. And oftentimes it takes a crisis for people like Nelson Mandela, for people like me, for people like you, to sit back and say, what is it I really treasure? What is it I value? What is it that I find most essential for this crisis and for life? And we need to be able to see and be aware that the values that we say we have might not be the values that we are actually practicing. The third thing that needs to happen is that oftentimes we find that in our lives, we need to have new values emerge. This is something that happened while Nelson Mandela was in prison. After he got out, there was an election in South Africa. He was elected the new president. The blacks are now in power. The whites are out of power. And they were beginning to make decisions for the first time about their destiny and their future. The new government is in place, and now they get to make their own choices. And the choices they make are going to be values-based choices. The sports committee for South Africa met. They made a decision. They're in power now. Now the white Afrikaners are going to pay for all of the suffering that they brought to the black Afrikaners. The whites play rugby, the blacks play football, or as we call it in America, soccer. And they decided to remove rugby as a sport in South Africa. They wanted to punish the whites. Nelson Mandela hears about this. He leaves his office and he makes a special trip to address the committee. And this is a movie video clip of what took place in that. So let's play the clip now.
I am aware of your earlier vote. I am aware that it was unanimous. Nonetheless, I believe we should restore the Springboks. Restore their name, their emblem, and their colors immediately. Our enemy is no longer the Afrikaner. They are our fellow South Africans, our partners in democracy. And they treasure Springbok rugby. If we take that away, we lose them. I know. All of the things they denied us. But this is no time to celebrate petty revenge. This is the time to build our nation. You elected me your leader. Let me lead you now.
What's the next step? Next slide. You can go to the next slide.
I am a...
Okay. You see, all leaders have values. Very few leaders have values that bring transformation. No leader thinks they're part of the problem. Most leaders are part of the problem moving forward. The room that Nelson Mandela walked into was full of leaders who all experienced the same crisis, but only one of them had transformational values. If you have transformational values, you may stand alone. You may have to stand up. Only Nelson Mandela stood seeing people as people, black or white. The crisis won't make a leader magically better. In fact, most of us, like the people in this clip, our first decision is not a transformational decision. But we as leaders have an opportunity to step back and examine the things that drive us, the things that motivate us. What are the things that are in our heart that are not helpful? We need to release those. What are the things that are beginning to grow that we can cultivate, as Agadir shared, as Hal opened up her eyes and her heart to see the steps to legacy? What are those steps? What can we grow? What can we focus on? And then what new values do we need to adopt to make a difference? I don't know what the next step for you is, but in order to take it, you need to choose your values, not let your circumstances choose your values for you. What do you need to nurture and embrace in order to bring transformational change? Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Shea. We appreciate the great work that you do in leadership and helping international leaders around the globe improve and enhance their opportunities to bring the best things to their countries, especially as they help the poorest of the poor. We do have a couple of questions today. I would like to ask if Dr. Hanna and or Professor Dalrymple could respond. Both of you have achieved amazing results throughout your initiatives. And I would like to know, and I think others would, what was most important as you worked with government officials and local officials? What was most important to your work in terms of how you communicated with them, how you worked with them during this crisis? And what did you think were the most important policies that were put in place that help you achieve those initiatives to help the poorest of the poor? Dr. Hanna or Professor Dalrymple?
I think I would yield that question to Dr. Hanna because I know her story, and yeah, she has a lot to say.
I do have a lot to say because I always integrate our work with the government. So I like to work with the government because, you know, by integrating our program into the government program, just like a leverage. So the government will will make it national because we cannot make our own programs national. But you know, with by by doing our mass wedding for different faiths, since we did it in 2015, we have already had the endorsements from 6 ministers. And by working with the youth festivals, because I spoke to the government, you know, I'm sorry to say, but our government is a little bit corrupt, you know. And then I present to the government, because but we have got to respect our government. I say to the government about our plan to dig out all the potentials of the millennials from the 34 provinces. That's why we invited the representatives from 34 provinces of our country to come together for a boot camp and to have a kind of festival where we invited about 11,000 students. So we involve the pastors, we involve the churches, we involve the religious leaders, we involve the business people to sponsor us, and we involve the governments. By doing that, we can just give like we can just make the governments do what they are supposed to do, which they haven't done. Because, you know, like when we do, when we do our mass wedding in Gorontalo, we asked the government, we spoke to the government, why I could have like 6 ministers to sign together, because I said, so this issue is actually our internal issue. If other country, Australia, wanted to help us, I think it is a little bit a shame, you know, if we cannot solve our own issue. So I said to the minister, can you help us make an MOU with 5 ministers in 1 week time? 6 ministers signed. 6 ministers signed. That I could never make them do. If I do with my own effort, I could never make ministers to sign in 1 week time. So 6 ministers signed. Also with the youth festival. With the youth festival, we involve about 4 different kinds of ministers: Minister of Youth, and Minister of Sport, Minister of Technology, and another minister. So we involve the ministers, and then with the coordinating, the Lord says that we have got to be bold to speak before the government. So I belong to the unashamed group. So I dare to speak to the government, and I said, what if we have if we take out all the potentials from the young people and then have their original plans, and afterwards when the government because the government is going to give like a special allowance to the villages, but the chief village sometimes do not know what to do with the fund. So I said, what about if we make the millennials, the students, make the plan, and afterwards they will be the one who will be guarding the project, so that the government can help. And recently, I also spoke to my young people, because we just launched another interfaith youth from different universities and from 7 religions in my country. And I said, we already lost with all the corruption and love for money and love for self with the former leaders. But I want you to really make commitment. If you want to live with integrity, with God fear, with fear of God, integrity, respect for your parents, because if you respect your parents, and you will respect your teachers, and you will respect your when you work, you will respect your boss, and in the government you will respect the government, because at this moment the rebellion spirit is very, very strong. So by integrating all the programs into the government's program, so we at the same time we respect the government, but the government will also elevate our program. This is one example. When we did it in Kupang, I only sent because we want to use as little money as possible for the transport. I just sent 1 doctor with his wife. So when they met with the regent in that area, the regent thought that they were going with a team. So when they asked, can I see your team? And then my doctor said, no, we just come to 2 of us, but we only bring our hearts. And we want to see your most devastated people in that area that no local doctor dared to go. And because the region, the local authorities saw that our doctor went there without any team, and only with their sacrifice and boldness to go to that area. And then the region moved all the organizations, even the Muslim organizations, to support us with all the doctors. So when they went to that isolated area, that was still where the animals and the people were still buried. The government helped removing all the mud from in front of the car, so that they would allow the car to move to the devastated area. So by doing this, we made the governments do what they're supposed to do, but that they do not want to do. So that is the polite way of making the government do. Even when we make a birth certificate in Gorontalo, we can make the governor to go with us to the 6 cities, and the government will move the local governments to work overtime in the villages with a car from the government, and they issue the birth certificate in one day, hundreds of birth certificates. So so we make make them a little bit shame. We want to commit ourselves. We want to work without any pay. We want to work without sacrifice. And if they do not sacrifice, I think they feel a little bit embarrassed. That's what we do. So we always integrate our programs with the government. That is why wherever we go, we always meet with the government leader, and we always meet with the religious leaders. So we meet with the leaders. And then we show that whenever we go, we always say we want to work with clean hands. So when we work with you, we expect you also to work with clean hands, because we want to work with fear of God, with fear of God, and we want to work with our hearts and with our love, not for money, but it is for our own people. That's how we do it.
That's so beautiful. Thank you, Dr. Hannah, for sharing.
Can I comment briefly, Dr. Kathleen?
Yes.
Yeah, just to affirm what we call Mama Hannah, what Mama Hannah has just said. I think the key to her success, and I know with mine, is collaboration between civil and government society associations. When I was in Mama Hannah's office, I met the man who was the head of the largest Muslim association in the country. And I also met Christian pastors who represented the church in the country, and government officials all working together to achieve good for the country. And so I remember being in a country with high officials who said to me, there's only one institution in this country that with the capacity to do what we need to do, and that's the church. The church is a part of civil society. And when civil society works together with government, I think we see greater success. Thank you for allowing me to take that minute.
Yeah, thank you. And we are running out of time here. We know people have busy schedules, but I would like for Professor Shea, love what all he has to say about leadership, but could you give us 3 short sound bite hits that we need to take away as leaders and we should not forget as we continue to wrap up the COVID situation and move forward to reestablish and reopen our nations?
Oh, just on the top of my mind, the first thing is pay attention to what thoughts take root in your mind. There's an old proverb that says, watch over your heart with all diligence, for from it flow the springs of life. And so we have to be careful of the emotions and the thoughts that grip us. And we have to keep a good filter in place, or else we'll start being driven by other people's thoughts, emotions, desires, drives, anger, fears. So we have to be careful about our own thoughts and minds. The second one is the principle that's in place in crisis, out of crisis, in family, in organizations, or wherever you are. And that is that leadership is relationship. Most of the world believes that leadership is a task. Leadership is primarily a relationship. The task follows. You need both. Leadership is relationship, and leadership is positive change, but first is relationship. And we have to see people as people around us, including our enemies, including our political enemies. We have to think of people as being jam-packed with potential to bring positive change. We need to look for ways to build bridges even into the people's lives that oppose us. And so leadership is relationship, whether it's friend, enemy, whoever it is. Do those things that lead to peace, that lead to relationship, that lead to ways to work together. And then leadership is task. Do those things that will help empower other people and release them with the potential that's been jam-packed into them. And there's probably something more profound that could be said, but those are the three things that come to my mind right away.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for your participation. Thank you for the speakers and the time that they've taken. We're very grateful. It's been a wonderful time with each of you, and we look forward to next year. Medha?
Thank you, Dr. Kathleen. I have two announcements to make. Soon after the conference, you will be receiving a link from UNITAR to UNITAR YouTube channel. So with the recordings of the two-day conference, and you can, of course, feel free to share it with others and rewatch the event. Second thing that I would like to announce that GILPP next year will take place in Geneva, hopefully, and I hope to see all of you here. And the dates, please write it down. It is May 31st to June 3rd. Well, thank you for your patience. And I will now move to close this conference. But before I do that, I would like to thank our partner, UNITAR, for co-hosting this high-level event. Thank you so much. Thank you for the technical team as well, who are working behind the scene and making all the efforts to that this all works together. I also wish to express my deep gratitude to all our distinguished speakers for their contribution, and to all the participants as well in this event. Thank you so much. Well, thank you, Dr. Kathleen, for co-moderating this with me. Thank you for the Executive Committee of GILPP as well. Well, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, goodbye for now, and see you next year in Geneva. Bye-bye. Thank you all. Bye-bye.